being recorded.
A very good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back again in the second part of our reading of the Westland through the lens of pandemic. Uh, Referring to the work published by Elizabeth Autka in the book Viral Modernism, the influenza pandemic and interwar literature. We are discussing this poem through the pandemic lens. And in the second part, we want to see that what further can be discussed. In the previous discussion, we have seen that why pandemic, even if it also kills so many people, fails to become a cultural memory. Whereas war with the similar kind of things where so many people die very easily becomes a cultural memory. And it can be said that pandemic, fever, disease is a personal battle. Everybody fights their individual battle, even though so many people are fighting. Whereas the war is something that is fought for nation, for larger number of people, though very few people are fighting there. In the battlefield, if a soldier is sacrificing the life, he might be saving so many innocent civilian lives. So he becomes a war hero. Whereas in virus, if I die, it is not a sacrifice. In fact, I may infect other people along with my death. I may spread disease and I may kill other people. So my sacrifice may also start a strain of sacrifices of so many people. So on these grounds, we can say that the deaths in the war turns into memorials and cultural memories, whereas that of pandemic fails to do so. We have one very fresh memory about 100 years, 1918 Spanish influenza, and we have almost forgotten. Our literary history failed to record it. And there were modernist writers writing during those times, so we can read those works and try to see whether in their language there was pandemic or not, whether the writers suffered from pandemic or not. And we can find that Yeats, W.B. Yeats, his wife, T.S. Eliot, his wife, family members, they died, they suffered from acute illness also. They suffered from influenza also. So it must be there in their poetry also. And that is what we are trying to read. Today's corona pandemic is very much fresh in our mind. For our generation, those who are living today and who experience this pandemic, they are never going to forget it. We are not going to forget this pandemic. But when it comes to our children or their children, and when we talk with them, at that time, we will have to go to language and try to see that how we can address our time that we have lived, the time of pain, agony, death, dead bodies. How do we narrate to the people who has not seen all those things? That can be something very challenging also. And if we will live longer life, we will be able to experience that also. Maybe most of you will be able to experience that when your third generation is living, your third generation, that your children's will be there. And then when you will be dada, dadi, nana, nani, and you will be telling the stories to them, at that time perhaps you may require a language to narrate the experience of pandemic there. So with that context, we are reading 100 years back literature to see this. So in the second part of our discussion, what we want to see is this aftermath of the pandemic. And we have three options to look at it. Yes, three options. First is death as an option. Second is viral resurrection. And the third one is silence, forgetting, and their afterlife. So very quickly, let us see this. So we read here in the initial part that the Westland not only captures elements of the pandemic's acute phase at both the individual and collective level, its atmosphere is also saturated with the two most common outcome of the outbreak. Two most common outcome of the outbreak, and that is death and an innervated living death. Death and innervated living death. Okay. So what is the meaning of innervated? Again, let us try to recall. Innervated. Innervate means to feel weak, physically, mentally, as well as morally, when we suffer from the lack of vitality, so far as physical, mental, psychological, and moral is concerned. At that time, we say inverate or inverted living death. Okay? So the poem is famously full of dead bodies. The opening corpse, the opening lines we have seen. The April is the cruelest month. That it seems like it is the point of view of buried body. It is the corpse who is there. So our camera is buried when we read those lines. The opening corpse, the drowned sailor, Phlebas, as well as scattered bones, the alley where the dead men lost their bonds, the rattle of the bonds, white bodies naked on the low damp ground, the bonds cast in a little low dry garret. So lot many references. The language is full of death and innervated living death throughout the poem. So that way we can read this part of the poem also, and we can find lot many examples for this. Okay? Later on in that paragraph, we find that the lurking somewhat hidden quality. Okay, let me share the screen so we can read it collectively, and you can mark these lines also. This line, the lurking, somewhat hidden quality of these bodies in the poem also suggests the haunting absence of war corpses at the home front, though they were ever present in memory and in memorials. All these bodies and bonds and their strange absence presence signify differently when the pandemic dead are considered. The poem's bodies and bonds flip their meaning, suggesting the material reality of the civilian corpse, not the military corpse, civilian corpses that has flooded cities and homes, where the dead body was far from absent in 1918. So this is very interesting reading. That when we see dead bodies, and people were reading this dead bodies, bonds, rattling of the bonds, drowning of somebody, was read with the deaths that happened due to war. But well, those wars are happening on the battlefield. They are not happening inside the city as such. Yeah? So when you see the images of the death inside the city, they normally suggest us, or there is a very interesting play between the presence and absence, a strange absence and presence, and it may signify differently that these are pandemic dead people rather than the people who are dying out because of battlefield or because of war there. So that reference is very interesting to be seen here. Then there is this reference of some images that comes here, and he refers to this in this paragraph. Eliot's images of pervasive death and bonds echo images and accounts from the era. One drawing, the Spanish Flu by Austrian artist Alfred Cubin depicts the stark bonds of Grim Reaper image. And this is very interesting to see this image, which we can see here. The image, this image is referring to. This is Grim Reaper. Yeah, Grim Reaper. This is Austrian artist. The title is Spanish Flu, and Alfred Cubin is the painter of this, and is drawn here beneath a turbulent, ominous sky. See the description of the painting. Beneath the turbulent, ominous sky, a leering skeleton with a scythe. In his hand, it is not a stick, but it is scythe. Scythe means it is used to cut long grasses. Scythe is a agriculture thing which is used to cut long grasses. But normally in this images it is always going with the personification of death, and he carries this, and with his long thing, like the grass are cut with this kind of reaper, human beings are cut with one sway. One sway you can cut so many human beings in this. If you have, it's very interesting to see this, that how the scythe is used to cut long grass, how the scythe is used to cut the long grass. Let us see this. I will share the screen.
Hello, I'm DB. Welcome back to Hughes Nursery. I'm really excited to share this episode with you because it's something a bit different to what I've done before. And this is actually siding. So here I have an Austrian meadow side. And my father and I went on a course last year. Our road size. And the reason why we're moving towards sides is because when we use things like strimmers and the lawnmower, there's something called a swath.
So you can see how it is used to cut grass. So you can visualize the imagery that this is how the death will be sweeping the scythe, and the grass are human beings. With a one stroke, you can kill so many people. This is what we can see in this. So the image of the scythe in this. Yes. So there is a skeleton image, and then there is a heap of bodies, as if there are dead bodies lying there, all twisted in agony. All twisted in agony. A no man's land stretches behind him. A no man's land stretches behind him, with low, blasted-looking scrub, a boot brush, and wooden plank path stretching to no destination. A townscape can be seen. Long there is the townscape, as if you are outside a town. Seen in the distance, and the one tower with an orthodox cross on the top is overshadowed by the skeletal image of the reaper. The drawing reflects the repeated reports during the pandemic. Repeated reports during the pandemic, and that is what is reported here. The pandemic of the heap of bodies that overwhelmed hospitals, towns, and cities. And the flu historian John Barry notes, the most terrifying aspect of the epidemic was the piling up of bodies. Piling up of bodies. Undertakers, themselves sick, were overwhelmed. They had no place to put bodies. There was no place to put bodies. We have referred to floating dead bodies in River Ganga, or no place even in the crematorium ground during coronavirus pandemic also. So Eliot offers in his poem a place to put them and a record of how death and bonds overtook the landscape. So all the references to bonds and deaths can be connected with this image and say that, well, this was the situation, that there was no place, and dead bodies were full of these things in large number also. Just a minute. During pandemic times, also there were very interesting various kinds of competition also regarding pandemic and coronavirus also. If I can find some significant image to talk about it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, some of the images I am seeing here. Okay. So normally now when you see this, that these competitions are normally for the children, competition for the coronavirus and other things there, And we find this kind of images of this corona time, like there is a coronavirus, then go corona go, then there is police, doctors as the warrior of the corona kind of a thing. And as the imagination of the people is captured by prime minister, because visual representation of prime minister is very high, coming on television or newspapers are always full with the photographs. So the children might have their imagination also might be filled with the image of prime minister Narendra Modi, which also gets reflected in this also. So these are those images. This is another some kind of competition where such things were given. This is another one. This so mask is something that represents our corona time, and people represent mask in different visuals to present the corona virus and different paintings of doctors, nurses, corona warriors in different ways. So these are some of the images that we find in different way, which tries to speak for the pandemic time. Yeah. As the warriors, doctors, and they are all fighting with this pandemic thing. Yeah. A big salute to corona warriors, and that is how people try to speak of the corona, okay? Mask and other things there. But well, in all this many these images that we have to wash our hands and those visuals and mask or a kind of a warrior. Everybody is a warrior in this corona game. Yeah? So well, lots of images we find, and lots of paintings and other things that we see. But well, in most of these images, what we fail to see is something like this visual, this was also the reality of our time. This was the reality of our time also. But this painting, which is a very crude reality of the time, which sometimes are hidden from us. Not only hidden, but it is also said that well, we should not draw such kind of things. We should not draw. This will spoil our image, or something like the concern of image. Another thing is very important for people, and so they don't do that. But the point is that people have drawn. We are talking about this is from Austrian, not Australian. Australian, there is European country, Australian artist Alfred Kubik, and that becomes a part of an academic book where this kind of painting is drawn, which is a very significant painting to understand the dead bones, which even T.S. Eliot is writing. Lots of dead bodies, dead bones rattling as an image in a poem also. So our concern is also a kind of a digression. We normally in online classes, we do not find much time to digress and interview several other things also. Otherwise, in a physical classroom, we have that advantage of digressing. And sometimes we feel that without digression, it is very difficult to connect everything with today. And if we cannot connect with today, perhaps there is no purpose of studying anything or learning anything also, if things cannot get connected with what is happening in and around us. So with this, in the same book, you find these images also. These images also you find, these are photographs. Yeah? So this is not a painting. Earlier one was a painting. And so you can say that, well, this is just an imagination of somebody. It was not actually like this, that so many dead bodies were there and so many people died. But here it is, this picture. And so there's a mass grave. Mass grave is dug. And for so many people, the grave is getting ready. Yeah? Digging mass graves for influenza victims. Philadelphia. This is the image used with the permission from the College of Physicians of Philadelphia. Copyright 2018, College of Physicians, Philadelphia. So this also is the image. Somebody has taken the photograph also. Now, why we come here and want to connect with today is that nowadays you might have seen that one photographer died in Afghanistan. Do you remember the name? One photographer who died in the clash between Taliban and Afghan soldiers. Yes, anybody? Do you remember the name of the photographer who died in the fight? Yes, Riddhi has commented. Danish Siddiqui. Yes, Danish Siddiqui. There. So Danish Siddiqui, and people are talking a lot about this photographer. And why people are talking about Danish Siddiqui, a photojournalist, there, because he has given us a very interesting visual memory of what things are happening, and these are very shocking images that he has given to us. So this all images, in this we find that there are this CAA problem, people beating somebody, one person is bowing down and some people are beating, or the migrants are walking on their way with the children on their shoulder, or this corpse is being burnt in the cremation ground in Delhi, or people with oxygen bottles, near death experiences of people with the oxygen bottles and other things also. So those all images that we can visualize here. That's why people talk a lot about Danish Siddiqui, and he was a photographer for Reuters. He was this is the Reuters page where he was a photographer, and he has captured many of these very interesting photographs there. These photographs of even all these things. In India, the pandemic second wave, which was incredible, and those photographs. And apart from this, also he has covered Kashmir and other parts. This kinds of burial grounds images, or the Kumbh Mela and the pandemic time. This is another image not related with the pandemic time. This was some of the other photographs that he used to take in different ways. This was some of the very controversial photographs. This is the cremation ground where so many dead bodies are ready to be burnt there. So this various images which are captured, and for which this became significant. Now, what became very significant along with this is that after all these photographs, many people started showing the crematorium ground and other things also. Many people started showing crematorium ground and this. And so it became again very controversial. It became very controversial there. Controversial in a sense, to such an extent that in one case going on in Supreme Court, Tushar Mehta, who is the Solicitor General, who speaks in behalf of the government of India in Supreme Court, he also referred to these kinds of reports to a vulture story, So people may be also surprised, what is this vulture story, and what is the reference that he has done of this vulture story. And when you refer to that vulture story, you come to know about another photographer who lived between 60 and 94, and he committed suicide. He was also Pulitzer Prize winner, photojournalist like Danish Siddiqui. He also was photojournalist who committed suicide, and he is well known for one photograph. And that is this photograph. Is one photograph for which is very well known. Is this one titled as this vulture and the child. The photograph of the vulture and the child, that was in Africa. This photograph that you see here. So for which he was known for. And why this became controversial, and what happened? So after taking that photograph, and he got the award for that photograph, where there is a very small kid having like a near-death experience, very hungry, and there is a vulture on the other side waiting for the child to die, and so that the vulture can eat the child. And so this photograph became very popular also. But Kevin Carter was criticized also for this photograph. He was criticized in a way like there is a viral message that goes around for Kevin Carter. This viral message, it was something like that once he was asked that in your photograph there were two vultures. It was not one, but two vultures were there. And then he said, who was the another one? The another vulture was he himself as a photographer. So the concern was that you should have saved the child rather than taking a photograph. આવા સમયે તમે ફોટોગ્રાફી કરતા હતા તેના કરતા તમારે બાળકને બચાવવાનું હતું. You are not supposed to take a photograph. So there's ethical concern about photojournalism that comes here, which was cited in the Supreme Court. There. Well, obviously, when we see and try to find the other thing, we find that that child was a boy child. That was boy child, and he lived after long. He got the food, and the child was not eaten by vulture. It was not eaten by vulture. Vulture was shooed away by the photographer before leaving the place, and child was taken to the care. And then the child died somewhere around 2007 because of another fever. 2007. This happened in 90s. So he lived almost more than 10 years, and then the child died out of another fever. But the child survived. It was not the death. But in a wrong way, in a wrong way, this story is associated that Kevin Carter committed suicide because of this experience. He was haunted by this idea that I also was a vulture who was doing such a kind of a thing, which was cited in Supreme Court. And people said that, well, this is the wrong example that is cited. It is a WhatsApp forward. This is coming from WhatsApp University. It is not the true fact about the thing. That if you will open a Wikipedia page of Kevin Carter, and if you come down to this Pulitzer Prize photograph in Sudan, you will find that this details you will find that in 2011, the child's father revealed the child was actually a boy, Kong Nyong, and had been taken care of by the UN Food and Aid Station. And then later on, he died. So it was not that Kevin Carter did not take care of a child, and so child died, but that is a wrong thing. But what we do normally, whenever such a kind of a situation comes, people do think that should the photography taken or not. But we know that some of the very interesting moments have reached to us through this kind of photographers. Dennis Siddiqui and similar kind of photographers who almost on the verge of sacrificing their life also. When he has taken this photograph here in this image, the photograph that you find here, when one person is severely beaten, in the corner you find one photo. So obviously this is that religious strife, and the majority of the religious group are beating the minority person. So he has to be as a part of the group who are beating to take this photograph. He has to be a part of that. So and then this images which became telling images of what were the real conditions of societies in different contexts also. But the concern that comes with this also is this, that when a tragedy is happening, when something bad is happening, somebody is dying, at that time, should one take photographs or not? Should one take photographs or not? Well, Danis Siddiqui or Kevin Carter, they are photojournalists. They are photojournalists. So they may be doing whatever they are doing. They may be as a part of a photojournalism. They may be doing the things. And it is a part of their job that they have to take photographs as the things happen. But what about common people? Common people. Normally, when this happened, this was Surat fire tragedy. It might be in your memory also, because so many children died in this tragedy. There was a tuition class, and there was a fire broke out, and so many children died in this tragedy. So this is this must be in the memory of the people, that how the children were jumping from that place, and so many children died in this tragic incident. So this way, the children were trying to run away, and they have to jump from that, and many also died falling from the height. Also, many of the children died. This also are some of the visuals of so many people that died in this tragedy. So during this time also that was there, that this were some of those visuals that some people trying to save some, and now see, once you have this all photographs, it means somebody was taking photographs also. It means somebody was taking otherwise you can't see this photograph. Videography and other thing also was done by the people. But then you can say that, well, that also is very useful. That also is very useful. That everybody, if you see the crowded space near the building, now if there is just a crowd there waiting for something, then nobody can do anything. If you are in that capacity, if you are not able to help, if you take a photograph, then as such there is nothing wrong also. If you are all alone and there is a choice whether to save or take photo, then there is an ethical concern. But otherwise, if things are photographed, videographed, then we get a proper document of the thing, and we can understand the tragic propensity of what is happening, the tragic propensity. Otherwise, people will not understand. And even after happening this, still we are struggling to have buildings where there is fire safety and other things or not. And this visuals really shocked so many people during that time. But again, we can say that all these photographs coming either from Spanish flu, which becomes a part of academic study, to what happens around us, it really helps a lot. It really helps a lot. People like Kevin Carter or Danis Siddiqui or anybody else who is taking and sharing the thing, it really helps in many ways documenting our life. Either it is a happy moment or an unhappy moment, a tragic moment or a comic moment in life. Everything, it really helps in documenting also. So that was a bit of digression in study to see that how this also matters or is also very important to be seen as a part of this aspect also. These are the points he is writing, and he is explaining that this is how the death aspect is captured in this poem. So Eliot records the desire to push the death away, to bury grief and move on, and at the same time he insists that the memory of these bodies should and will always return. The memory of these bodies should return and will always return. And it may return in terms of the photography done by Danis Siddiqui, or in different forms of anybody writing a poetry where would say that Sab Changa Si, poem by Parul Khakkar, also will talk about dead bodies floating on river Ganga. But time and again, the images and the poetry will keep on coming even after hundreds of years, and people will have the visual memory of the tragedy that we have lived, or still perhaps we are living. We are waiting for the third wave, where people said that it may be very acute also. Well, so that was that. And second option to read this is viral resurrection. So amid all the death and bonds, the Westland serves as the foundational wellspring of viral resurrection, in addition to the viral threat embedded in the return of Stetson's corpse. So this poem also tries to tell us that how this it's not just bodies and that are affected, though they certainly are, but the city, the landscape, the vegetation, emotions, thoughts, minds, language, words, and even the poem. Everything is infected by virus. So that becomes an important point to be seen here. Eliot and his wife both personally felt caught in a perpetual living death. Let me share this paragraph also. You can keep on marking. If you are not able to find, you can ask me so I can. So this is page number 157. Yes. Yeah, Eliot and his wife both personally felt caught in a perpetual living death in the pandemic, post-pandemic moment. The seemingly endless cycles of illness, recovery, fatigue, and failure wore Eliot down until his nervous collapse. So he writes this influenza, the long epidemic of domestic. But we know that even today, many people who once suffered from corona virus, they still are not able to live a normal life. They still have a problem living a normal life. The lungs are not working in full capacity. They get tired very quickly, and the constant fear that if the immunity is low and again the bout of pandemic can capture, then what? So under that, they keep on living the thing. And these paragraphs also try to compare with war. The war and the other things are also constantly compared in this part of the essay also. Okay? I jumped down to the last part, the third part of the essay. In the third part, that is silence, forgetting, and their afterlife. Yeah? Silence, forgetting, and their afterlife. Yeah? Alongside all the ways the Westland registers the pandemic, from the symptoms of the virus to its aftermath of death and innervation. It also works as a testament to its erasure, as an eraser, memory eraser. Critics have frequently pointed out the poem's multiple references to silence and the difficulties of communication. Indeed, such difficulties became a defining feature of modernism, in part through Eliot's defining poem. The problems with speaking and communicating have been traced to the war, among other causes, but the poem is poignantly a showcase and a resistance and an example and a representation of the silence that surrounded the pandemic and the ways it became unspeakable and forgotten. So that is a very important point that we see here, that how this silences around the pandemic, which is again caught by the poem also, and which perhaps has supported in forgetting the pandemic also. Imagine a situation where you are, instead of talking about death and dead bodies and other thing, you are just, your mind is just captured by thali bajao, ya diya jalao kind of thing only, or put a flower on the warriors instead of really taking care of warriors. And so many people are dying instead of that. Then what happens? There is a wrong way of capturing the pandemic. That is a wrong way of memorizing the pandemic. And people would just memorize the pandemic in that they will forget the tragic propensity of that. People will fail to register the names. In America, one of the newspapers, when I think 1,000 or 2,000 people died, first 1,000 or 2,000 people died, on the front page, the first page was full of the names of all those people. The names of only, nothing else on the front page, but the names of all those people only. Here the things are different. In India, the things are quite different. Whereas here in Parliament, the answer is given that nobody died of oxygen, lack of oxygen. That answer is given. So zero death. The answer in the Parliament is zero death due to oxygen crisis that has happened. And even the death certificates of the people do not mention coronavirus. Death certificate also. So you do not have a document after 50, 100 years. If you want to tell somebody that, well, my grandfather passed away in pandemic, so I have a first-hand experience of pandemic. If I have written a poem on pandemic, I want to prove that, well, I was serving my grandfather, and then how he was living, how he was suffering. I have seen. But then people say that you have to give proof, and you say, well, that certificate is not there. Medical documents are not there. Nowhere, if it is not mentioned, then how you are going to record those things. So people learn from this experience that someday you will have to do academic study of everything. You will have to do academic study of everything. But if you do not have enough evidences left, if the documents are not recording the moments in a proper way, then it will be highly problematic. You know that even people like Danish Siddiqui, who try to capture the problems in societies, the fractures in societies, the fissures, the fractures, the thresholds, where there are crises, moments of crisis, those things, those moments are captured by Danish Siddiqui and the like, and his like of photojournalist. But then you know that Danish Siddiqui is highly hated person in India. If you have seen some of the trolls, so many people were celebrating the death of Danish Siddiqui also. People were celebrating. You might not have seen. You might have seen the tweets by the politicians sitting in the high offices. Tweets about the injury in the thumb of a cricketer. ક્રિકેટર ને નાની મોટી ઈજા થાય તો પણ ઊંચી ઓફિસમાં બેઠેલા પોલિટિશિયનોએ ટ્વીટ કરી હશે એની चिंता करता કે ઓ તમને આટલું બધું લાગી ગયું. This person died in a clash, in a war zone between Taliban and Afghan, and he was reporting on the side against Taliban. He was reporting against Taliban, and he was in the crossfire, and he died. Nobody tweeted. Nobody had taken a notice officially of such a thing. That itself shows that what is. But these are the challenges in all times. These are the challenges in all times, and people have to again think of some way of narrating. And those who are alert, those who are academically alert to all these things, they are always worried. If today is recorded in a wrong way, then those people who has historical sense, they are worried that no, this must go into the annals in this way, not the other way. That is always the concern with lot many people. So this kind of study remains incomplete. This reading of Westland becomes incomplete if there is no documentary evidence to support those things there. So this is the thing, and in the last paragraph of this, we see that the pandemic lens also invites. Let me share the last paragraph. Yes, the pandemic lens also invites a shift in how we see one of the poem's defining features. Its ubiquitous fragments, so often imagined as the aftermath of a bomb with the explosion of World War I, leaving behind these beads of cultural shrapnel. These fragments should also be seen as the aftermath of a proliferating viral catastrophe, both in the body and in the air, the results of which fragment thoughts, memories, communities, bodies, stories, structures, and minds. So how all this, everything is there. The result of which fragment, we have thoughts which are fragmented. Our memories are fragmented, or you can say memories like shattered glass, shattered mirror, where you see so many things, but everything is broken. Fragmented communities, fragmented bodies, fragmented stories, fragmented structures, and fragmented minds also. The poem's many voices and other defining features of the poem emerge as a way to capture a difficult to balance quality of pandemic suffering. It was both an individual experience, a conflict fought within the body, and also a global tragedy. The voices speak to the individual quality, but their numbers and their overlap, and the way a cacophony of contemporary voices blend with the crowd of allusions register the collective quality of a global outbreak. To read the Westland in its full context, we must hear what these voices tell us about the silencing of illness and pandemic's ghostly but widespread afterlife. So it is this silencing of illness and pandemic's ghostly but widespread afterlife also. What would happen if you would have recorded all this thing in a proper way? What would happen if you record everything in a proper way? Well, you will find that even today there are people who are anti-vaxxers. Anti-vaxxers. Today, just a minute, let me show you one side. There is lots of campaign against the people who are anti-vaxxers. So who say that, well, they are not ready. They don't want to get vaccinations. They are completely against those things also. And there are lots of movement going on in USA. In USA about this. that people say that, well, vaccination is not good, it is harmful, and so people are not ready uh, to get vaccinated. Now, it is not the people who are religious people in countries like India who, on the religious ground, are not taking vaccinations. It is in America on a different ground. People are against the idea about vaccination, and people say that, well, these people, anti-vaccine movement, could undermine efforts to end coronavirus pandemic. And but yet it is still happening in a similar way, still there. And number of this says, this way you will find this photographs of people on the road, of this freedom from vaccination, freedom from mask. Lot many people they try to make this thing as if it is a corporate conspiracy. And different stories are given about these things also there. Some of the websites are reporting is something like this also, that those people who are dying in USA nowadays, almost all US COVID-19 deaths now in the unvaccinated thing. So those who are not vaccinated, those people are dying a lot. Those numbers are coming, which says that almost 99% of the 18,000 COVID deaths nationwide were unvaccinated people. Unvaccinated people. So these are the stories coming from USA. That still large number of people dying. But who are these people who are not taking vaccine? And yet this happens there. So if we have a proper memory of the thing, then our future generation will realize that what we are supposed to do, how the literature will have to capture the pandemic or the problems of society, and later on, if it is taught in a proper context, then the posterity will realize that in this condition, you are not supposed to doubt the scientific invention. And if the scientists and doctors say that the vaccines are, in a way, there is no other answer, but that is the answer, then people would say that, well, let us give chance to this vaccine, even if we do not have other alternative then. Otherwise, you are at the risk of dying, and you may also kill many other people also. That is one of the very interesting concerns, that we read and understand pandemics in a proper way, if it is recorded in a proper way. People will not have a mad rush for thali bajao and diya jalao kind of a thing when this happens. They will very understand that, well, these are not at all connected with what we are supposed to do when this happens. What we have to do, that is very significant a thing. We have to record it in a proper way so that posterity can learn a better lesson from these things also. So that is this this reading. This is the second part of, that is aftermath, afterlife of pandemic, which also gets recorded in the Westland also. Any questions from anybody? Okay, then there are no questions. Let me end the recording of this session here.